Thank you everyone for joining today for our webinar on unified communications and collaboration within the Microsoft solution set. My name is Chris Sheridan. I'm a Senior Solutions Architect here at New Signature, specializing in unified communications and collaboration. I've been working with Lync all the way back through the LCS days, Lync Communication Server, and all the way through to where we are now. So hopefully today we'll give you a good overview of where we're at with Lync 2013, sort of what's coming down the road, and the different ways in which Lync can help you change your communication methodologies within your organization. So when we talk about unified communications and collaboration, everyone's going to define it a little different. So we're going to take a minute here and kind of define what we mean when we talk about unified communications and collaboration. Within our organizations, we've got all these disparate systems that are all over the place, and some of them may be connected, some of them not. We might spend a lot of money integrating different pieces, but we generally have these different silos, even within IT, of different areas of collaboration or management, whether it be, line of business apps and managing those, through communication, through green initiatives, through network optimization or content management, through customer support. All of these different areas might have different needs or different pieces of information. So when we look at how they all come together in the Microsoft solution set, what we're really looking for is to offer a unified approach across both your on-premises environment as well as your cloud-based environment, bringing all these systems together, giving you a single point of management, giving you a single platform to manage, and kind of simplifying both the user community as well as the IT community. There's an overarching concept that comes into Microsoft's sort of unified communication and the Microsoft approach, and that is the right information to the right user at the right time, regardless of device. That's important enough, I'm going to repeat it. The right information to the right user at the right time, regardless of device. Meaning, I don't care where your users live. I don't care what device they're on. I need to get them the content they need to get their job done, to be more efficient. And how do we do that? And we'll see as we look at the solution today, but also how it touches other areas, how Microsoft is doing that and sort of what's changed. So when we look at our integrated solutions, there's a bunch of different layers we're going to talk about. So first here at the bottom, we have our infrastructure layer, right? So we've got our virtualization, we've got our databases, different integrated services, security monitoring management, so System Center, things of the like, Active Directory, our infrastructure layer that we're running everything on. Above that, we have a communications platform. So how are we communicating and collaborating with others, right? Whether it be through mail, whether it be through voice or IM or video or faxing or whatever it is, we've got this communication and collaboration layer above it. Then we have our structured processes, and this is our area where we're dealing with workflows or with data management or big data, our various ways of interacting with people. That would include areas like our call center, right, where we have very structured data and a structured way of approaching our employees opposed to normal telephony, which is fairly unstructured. Then above that we have SharePoint, which is our presentation layer, which sits on top of the rest of the stack and really is for those non-transactional based users, but instead our information-based workers or our data consumption users, right? People who just want to consume the data but aren't actually involved in creating it or inputting it or maintaining it. Right, so that's our presentation layer on the top. So I affectionately refer to this as the hamburger slide, but this really, I think, sums up the Microsoft world. And if you've attended Microsoft presentations in the past, I'm certain you've seen things like this. But where we're going to focus today is that communications layer, because it really is the bridge between our structured processes and our presentation and our user base. It's where the users really come in and how are we communicating with each other. So when we say unified communications and collaboration in the Microsoft world, we're really talking about three different components: Exchange, SharePoint, and Lync. While we're going to focus on Lync today, I think it's important to set the table of where the three touch and where they work together. So when we talk about these applications in the unified communication world, Lync is what handles our synchronous communication or our real-time communication: voice, video, IM, presence. Exchange is what handles our asynchronous collaboration, our person to machine, as opposed to synchronous, which is person to person, right? Email, faxing, voicemail, all of these are functions of Exchange, not Lync. And that's a great divide. There's usually a lot of confusion as to what function sits within these two applications. So it's important to understand that Exchange is asynchronous, and any feature or function that's going to come out down the road is going to fall along those lines. If it's a synchronous workload, it's going to be Lync. If it's an asynchronous workload, it's going to go to Exchange. SharePoint is that layer where we keep all of the content, the people, the processes, all of that information that we're looking to collaborate on. Because we're not just calling each other to say, how's the weather, right? We're calling to get work done and to accomplish a goal. So where is that people, processes, and content that we're collaborating on? And that would be SharePoint. So when you have the three together, that's where the most power in the system comes out. Right? Now you can replace any one of these with a point solution and it may be fine. But back to that earlier slide, we're looking for that collaborative effort. We're looking to bring things together. And that's the Microsoft concept, right? Best of suite, right? Have everything integrated together. When we start throwing other components in here like Yammer or Office, that's where we start to see that integration and that connection, right? We cannot talk about our modernized applications if we don't sort of look at how they all fit together. And another great thing, I was talking with Chris Hertz, our CEO, the other day, and he had a really great point. You can't even talk about modernizing your applications if you haven't modernized your infrastructure to run those applications. That includes your desktops, your laptops, your tablets, your mobile phones. If you're still running 7-year-old equipment or 10-year-old servers, it's hard to modernize the application if the user access to those systems is out of date. Right? We have to kind of look at it holistically across the board. So where does Microsoft fit in the grand scheme of things? So I'm going to jump all the way back to '09, and when Gartner really started seriously looking at unified communications and going across it. So, I didn't grab every year, but I've grabbed a bunch of them. When you look at these Magic Quadrants and you look at what they're measuring, which is the ability to execute, the completeness of the vision, what they're doing, their ability to execute, the ability for the partner community and for the customers to be able to execute the plan. When you look at it through the years, '09, Microsoft in the upper left, continues in 2010, continues in 2011, and now when you look at 2014, we've pushed even further into the completeness of vision. And I think that applies when you compare it to Cisco, to the content management and the messaging piece. While Cisco, yes, has a great telephony platform and the ability to do instant messaging, the completeness of vision, when you talk about synchronous, asynchronous, and all of that content, that's where I think Microsoft has the complete vision of UC more than any others. Then that goes all the way down to the devices and the way we use it, to tablets and Surface tablets and the various devices that are coming out that enable mobility. When you think about a Surface tablet and being able to take my tablet with me wherever I go and having a headset connected to it, and thus having my phone with me at all times and all my documents with me at all times and all of my messaging modalities in one device at my fingertips, it really is amazing when we think about that. So one of the biggest things we struggle with at New Signature and in the Lync community is getting this word out, of getting people, CFOs, CEOs, and others to understand that this is not new to Microsoft. This is not something Microsoft just got into or is brand new to the market. Lync is a very mature product. We're on the 6th iteration of it. We are, 5 years into doing our enterprise voice work. This is a true enterprise class PBX, and we'll talk about the different modalities and way you can deploy Lync and step through sort of a demo of the system today. So we're definitely going to see it live, but understand that Lync really is pushing the industry. Okay, so what are the barriers to our users? Why are we looking at this? Why are companies looking at Lync or unified communications? What's really pushing us out there? And first and foremost is distributed teams and customers and partner relations, right? The days of everybody showing up to a brick and mortar building are dying. Every year it grows more and more. Again, same Gartner reports and Forrester reports, if you go back and look at them, 65% of people will work remotely some percentage of the time by 2016, right? 2/3 of the workforce will be in some way, shape, or form remote staff or have some time that they are remote. So how do we deal with that? And then when you think about talent acquisition, right? If you're limited to a certain geography, well, from an employee standpoint, you're limited to the talent that's available to you in that geography. The more you're able to manage and deal with distributed teams and hire talent where it is, you open yourself up to get the best and the brightest. And more companies are pushing this direction. Right? So how do you do it? Here I am. I'm sitting just north of Providence, Rhode Island. New Signature's headquartered out of D.C. We have employees out west in the Mountain West district of Microsoft. We have people down in Richmond, all the way up through Maine. Right? How do you manage and how do you deal with a collaborative team? So that's the first thing that's really pushing us. Second is high cost of communications. When we talk about, PBX replacement or telephony replacement, or when we're talking about our SIP trunks and all the various parts of our communication strategy, it really is a huge cost to the organization. And how do we drive that down? How do we find some cost savings? I haven't met a customer yet where the phrase more with less was not uttered at least some point in the relationship. How do I do more with less? How do I spend less money but get more out of what I'm doing? And we'll show you some ways and talk about some ways we can do that. And then the other big piece is lack of integration. When you think about the different modalities that we have to manage as end users, right? Every user has a cell phone now. We have a desk phone or an office line. We have multiple email addresses, Facebook, Twitter, up and down the line of the different forms of communication that we are managing as individuals. And the more we can bring those together, the more those can integrate, the easier my life becomes as an employee. I now have less to think about. That also goes along the line of look and feel. The more I can unify the look and feel of all of these applications, the more I can simplify it and make it feel the same regardless of the device you're on, the easier I make training and adoption. Right? So I'd also put into this lack of integration, training and adoption, and my ability to tolerate the different modalities. So when we think about that transformation of communication, everyone gets a giggle out of this slide, right? And we think about in the past, 30 years, right? And now when you look even further out to 2014 and where we are 7 years later and where we've come to, it's amazing. It's amazing the progress we've made in such a short span. I flip this around to a great challenge within IT. Somewhere in the past 10 years, the perception of IT became easy. Somewhere in the past 10 years, the perception has become that we can't tolerate change. We can't change an application because users might get upset and they might have to learn something, and we're afraid of that, right? If you think back to 1995, right? Windows 95 launches and everybody upgraded. It's revolutionary, truly revolutionary, changes our industry. Windows 95 launch. 3 years later, Windows 98 comes out. Everybody upgrades. Nobody stays behind. People either on NT or they're on 98. They do not stay on 95. Well, then Windows 2000 comes out. Everybody upgrades. Nobody stays behind. Nobody skips a version. Everybody rolls it out. Well, then XP comes out. Everybody rolls it out. Nobody skips it. Everybody comes out with it. Everybody migrates to it. So in an 8-year, 9-year span, we changed operating systems 4 times. So every 2 years, users had to learn not just a little difference, but a radically different operating system. And then came the bane to my existence, Windows XP, right? Windows XP lasted for way longer than it should have. And because of that, it furthered that perception that IT is easy and I don't have to learn new things. And change is bad. And I'm on a one-man mission to convince people that this is not true, right? And change is good if it's done for the right reasons, right? We don't want to do change for change's sake, but when we look at the innovations that's coming out, when we look at what's available to us, both on the front end and back end of these systems, it's worth that change. This is one of those areas when we look at our communication methodology. 10 years ago, every company I knew blocked instant messaging. They blocked AOL-IM. They blocked Yahoo Messenger, right? These were banned services that were blocked at the firewall. Every one of those same companies is now talking to me about bringing in-house an IM solution because they simply can't live without it. There is such a demand. Flip that around to things like Box or Dropbox. Why are people looking at SharePoint more than ever? Because they're looking at these unmanaged services and realizing there's such a pent-up need for the service that users are going out and getting it on their own if we're not providing it for them. So when we think about all of these different communications methodologies and why we're bringing it back into the corporate world, you know, this is the push. This is why services like Lync exist and why it's so imperative that as an organization we look at them. I always challenge organizations when I walk in. One of the first questions I ask is, do they have a bring your own device or BYOD policy? And every organization answers yes, and either they allow them or they block them. And I'm particularly interested in the ones who say they don't allow BYOD. Because my first challenge is let's walk around the building and see how many devices we can find that are connected that are BYOD. And let's start with the executive floor, right? And everybody laughs and smiles. Of course, the CFO and CEO have their personal iPad connected to email. They're the CFO and CEO. Well, those are the users that we need to be most concerned about security. They're the ones with access to really sensitive data, right? So if we don't have these security policies, how can we possibly manage them? I'm not overly concerned about someone who has access to nothing critical and nothing crucial having a BYOD device. It's those users who actually have access to these systems, and they're the ones who tend to violate our policies the first. You know, again, another example I kin it back to is text messaging. 10 years ago, if you had walked into a corporate entity and say text messaging should be part of their corporate communication plan, you'd be laughed out the door. Text messaging is what teenagers did. And now I don't know a single organization where text messaging is not part of the corporate communication strategy in some way, whether it be emergency messaging, whether it be notifications of a server issue. Somehow text messaging is part of the corporate communication structure. So we really need to embrace these changes because as these millennials, this next generation of workforce hits, they're only going to get more demanding. When I think about my son, I have a 12-year-old son who is very techno-savvy. He walked into my office the other day and asked me to request a static IP address for our FiOS connection because he was setting up a Minecraft server. Think about that. My 12-year-old son was asking for a static IP address and knew what that meant and knew what needed to be done. It's going to be very different as we look to acquire this talent over the next few years. So with all of that, and we come back, the key here becomes the user experience. So when we look back at that slide earlier, what's going to unify all of these different systems? It's going to be the user experience. It's going to be setting up the same authentication across all of our systems, setting up the same administration policies, setting up the same storage policies, and creating that unified user experience. And I get asked a lot to compare and contrast Lync to other telephony systems, Cisco or Avaya or Nortel or whatever. And the biggest thing I say, and the biggest difference is, Microsoft builds their software from the user back. Just about everybody else builds it from the server room forward. Now, you can argue which one's better, and I'm not even here to pass judgment on that and say which one is better versus the other. What I am saying is you have to make a decision as to which one you value more. Do you value that user experience and that unified experience, or do you value the box on the back end, right? Because let's be honest, Lync is Microsoft server based. It's not that it's more complicated or more difficult to run on the back end, but it's not a black box that you just buy either, right? It is a Microsoft server based service. And if you want just a black box that you buy and install, well, then Lync isn't for you, and that's okay, right? But if you're looking for that user experience and that unified communications and collaboration that's integrated with the rest of what you do, that's where Lync comes into play. So again, take all of that, unify it, and then add the excellent piece, compliance, right? And that's the big reason for bringing all of this in-house is compliance. SOX, HIPAA, JTIL, whatever compliance you have to maintain today, that's the reason to unify it. All right, so we're going to swap here and we're going to do a demo of the live system. I don't believe in slideware. I like to show off the live system here. So take a second here to load as I swap over to my screen, and there you go. You should be able to see my Lync client now. So we're going to step through the 2013 client and just use this to talk about the various features and functions that exist within the Lync system. So starting right at the top, we have what's happening today. So that's our ability to put into context our own example of what's going on or what's happening with me today. So I can simply put in here, doing a Lync demo. And voila, now everybody has that contextual update as to what's happening with me. And that's key when we think about how we're collaborating and it's a webinar today, so we won't ask you guys to raise your hands or answer in the IM window, but how many people on the phone have actually screened a phone call before, right? How many people have actually screened a phone call? And I love when I do this live, everybody giggles and nods. Of course we screen phone calls. And when I ask why, the primary answer is, well, I don't know what they want or I'm busy. And that's exactly it. Play psychologist with me here for a minute. When your phone rings, you have 4 rings to answer 3 questions. And every time your phone rings, you answer the same 3 questions. Who is it? What do they want? And is it more important than what I'm doing right now? Well, thanks to the advent of caller ID, we usually know who it is. And I say usually. And most people would agree if it comes up blocked or unknown, that's the kiss of death. We don't answer the phone because I don't know who it is. I can't even get past the first gate here. All right, let's say I know who it is. Well, what do they want? That I don't know. There are a select handful of people where it may not matter. The CEO, my wife, there are various people who it doesn't matter what they want. If they're calling me, I'm going to pick up. But now we get through that gate, and is it more important than what I'm doing right now? Well, if I don't know what they want, there's no possible way I can answer that third question. So I let them go to voicemail. And then I listen to what they want, I figure out who it is, and I decide if I'm going to call them back. Again, there's all sorts of great studies done, and I'm a big stat geek if you haven't figured it out by now. There's all sorts of great studies done on the average response time to emails and voicemails. The average response time to an email in today's day and age is 8 hours. And for those of you in IT, you usually get stunned because IT people, we tend to be more connected. We have more devices, more toys. And we're also in a service-based industry, so we tend to respond a little quicker. But when you take the average of all your emails, yes, there are emails I respond to in 5 seconds, but there are also ones I don't respond to for 3 days, right? Another kiss of death is this is not urgent, right? Someone puts that in an email. Great, I'll get to that later because I got 20 emails that are all saying, oh my God, you need to get back to me in the next 10 minutes. So that's the first change. So by introducing context, I can change how we're interacting because the average response time to a voicemail is actually 10 hours and rising. Every year it gets worse. People don't respond to voicemails like they do. Many colleagues I know, their voicemail message actually says, don't leave a message, hang up and send me an email or a text because they know they don't respond to them. So when we talk about this prioritization, we talk about this collaboration, this is just one of those areas where I can send a signal to people of what I'm doing. So right beneath that, you have my photo, and the photo is very key because As you get more dispersed as an organization, it's great to have a face with a name, to know what someone looks like, even before doing video, that you can see what a person looks like and get an idea of who you're talking to. Next to that, we have our status. So you can see currently I'm in a do not disturb status. That simply means that I am not going to receive phone calls or IMs. I put myself in the status when I'm doing presentations. There is actually an automated status, and because I'm presenting my second monitor, it's not going to do it. If I was presenting my first monitor, it would swap me to what's called presenting mode, where it would automatically put me in a do not disturb status. I have multiple monitors and I'm sharing out my secondary one, so no screen pops or toasts will appear on my secondary monitor, so therefore it doesn't feel the need to put me in an automatic do not disturb status. But I can always do a manual do not disturb status. You can see when I reset my status, it put me back to in a conference call. Lync is aware that I am on the phone. And when we look at various people, I can see Brad's in a meeting, Christine's in a conference call, I can see John Williams is in a call. And there's a key distinction between the two, a conference call versus a regular call. Think about it from a modality standpoint. How many of you are ever on conference calls? It's a training, it's something, and you're multitasking. You know, you're listening, but maybe you're not an active participant. Right? Now, that's not all of our meetings, but that is some. So in a conference call, maybe I treat you different. I might ask, can you IM? Right? Can you instant message? I know I can't call you, but can you instant message? Well, no. Or if you really need to be in a do not disturb status, then go into that. So beneath that, you'll see my location. So again, this just gives contextual information to people as to where I'm at. So I'm currently set to the North Attleboro office, which is my home office. It's where I work. So my colleagues know that I'm at home and I am in the home office. So the New England team here knows that if they need me in Nashua, New Hampshire for a meeting, that I'm an hour away. And my colleagues maybe in DC or New York know that I'm home today and I can't do a live meeting in DC, I've got to do it via video, right? So again, it's just that context of giving it. So when you look at these different options up above, they're all about integrating that context so that I know what's going on. So I can see Jim is at the office, he's available, he's video capable. If I have a question, now's a great time to call Jim. Whereas Christine, she's in a conference call and she's busy. It's not a good time to call her. Or Matt. Matt is currently set to out of office. He hasn't moved his computer in 5 hours. And I can see through the little star right here, it may be hard to see, but there's a little star at the base of his name that he's got his out of office message turned on. And I can see Chris also has his out of office message turned on, is on his mobile phone, and hasn't touched Lync in 10 minutes. Again, it's ways that I know to interact. You know, I may call Chris right now, but I'm going to call him on his cell phone because I can see he's not in front of his computer. And I'm going to call his cell phone. It's just different ways in which I'll interact with that user. So what else can I do with a person? So when I mouse over somebody's name, I get these wonderful icons. And for those of you who are familiar with previous versions, you remember it was words before, call, video, etc. Well, Microsoft does have a lot of language packs, but there are only so many, 32 to be precise. So when we think about that from a training standpoint, we've actually swapped to pictures because pictures are universal. If you've got a degree in education, this is actually all old hat. It's 101 in education or learning, that this is a better way to go. So we've swapped now in 2013 to pictures for IM, for phone call, for video, etc. So if I wanted to say I am Christine, I would just click on her name, up it would come, and I could say, hey, Christine, doing a demo. And off I go. So now Christine has received that I am, and she can reply back to me. So again, I have that ability to interact, right? You'll see here I also have tabbed IM. So if I'm grabbing multiple people, again, if you're familiar with previous versions, it was an individual window for each person. But now we're on par, and we've got tabbed IM for different people. So I can grab different people and have all my conversations going at once. Well, what else can I do? Well, you notice Christine could IM me back. So when I right-click on Christine's name, I get all these different options. Same as before, send IM, call, etc. I also have the ability to find a previous conversation. I'm looking for something she and I talked about earlier. Or Christine is added to my favorites list. That's what we happen to be dealing with now. In previous version, we had what was called the recent contacts list, and it saved your 10 most recent contacts. Well, that's great, but what we discovered through research and talking to clients was that just because I talked to you last doesn't mean I'm ever going to talk to you again or I talk to you often. So we've actually swapped it now to favorites, where it's actually monitoring how often you interact with somebody, and it will automatically add them to it, and you can also manually add them to it. So I have my favorites list, and these are the people I talk to every day, multiple times a day. Well, one of the other things I can do with Christine is change my privacy relationship with her. What does that mean? Well, I put her in work group. Work group means share my notes, location, and all my contact information. More importantly, contact can interrupt my do not disturb status. I affectionately refer to this as the fire me list. Anyone who has permission to fire me gets put in work group. This includes my wife, right? So that people can interact with me even when I'm in a do not disturb status. So those people who need me or might need me in an emergency, I always give permission to break through my do not disturb status. But it's a very trusted list. By default, everyone inside my organization is a colleague. Now, the different relationships can also affect what goes on. So we see here my people internally, but you can see a few people here from Microsoft. So Lisa Salter is one of the Microsoft account reps here in New England. Now, Microsoft, by default, does not share photos outside their organization, meaning as a federated user, someone who is connected to me from another company, they don't share their photos. However, Lisa has moved me into her work group. Within the Microsoft setup, that means it shares her photo. But you will notice for Lisa, it only says busy. It doesn't say in a call. It doesn't give me calendar. It doesn't give me anything else. It simply says busy. Now, in the case of Lisa, all that means is they're not sharing detailed status outside. They're just sharing free busy. Whereas internally, when I see David is marked as busy, what that tells me is David went up here and manually put himself in busy. Because otherwise he would show up as in a meeting, or he would show up as in a call, or some other detail, because he's inside my organization. So what does that tell me? Think about the context I've just described. David manually went into Lync and set his status to busy. That tells me he's really busy. It's not just that he's got a meeting or he's in a call. He is busy enough that he has marked himself busy. So maybe my interaction with him will be different. We've also set up some custom statuses here at New Signature, and you've seen them probably quickly as I went by them, where we've got working from home or working on site or study time. We value our study time very greatly to pass our certification exams, so we mark that as a do not disturb status. And you can create as many of these as you want that are customized to your business and how you are interacting. And again, it's just another way to set the tone or set the idea for different people and how they're interacting with you. So from within an individual call, now I can't actually demo making a call because that would hang up on you guys. But here I am in our meeting today, and you can see the internal New Signature people. I get items like showing up voice quality. Now this is not actually showing me my wireless connection strength. This is actually showing me something called my MOS score. And for those of you on the call who are technical, that will make sense to you. It's monitoring latency and jitter and the network performance for my voice. Because as a remote employee, my central IT department cannot do anything if I have bad call quality. I'm working from home on my FiOS connection. If I'm having poor call quality, well, then that's not going to help. Right? They can't do anything other than inform me and give me the ability to say transfer this to a different device or transfer it to my cell phone. Maybe my headset isn't working well and I want to swap it to my phone, or maybe I want to send it to my cell phone because my signal is so bad. right? So I have that ability. I also have the ability to turn on video. And so for very briefly, you'll see me transmit video here, and you have the ability to see me, and I can do video conferencing. But I get a video preview here. So I have the capability of seeing what I look like before I turn on video. I also have the ability to present content, whether it's sharing out one of my monitors, I have multiple, sharing out a whiteboard session, sharing out a PowerPoint as we were earlier, doing a Q&A session or a poll session. So we have different abilities. Now we look at some of those integrations. Here's OneNote. So we have a dedicated OneNote integration where on this call I could open up a OneNote notebook and share it across all members of the team. I could upload attachments. Now, in the case of this meeting, I did upload the PowerPoint presentation. I didn't on this one. So I could upload the PowerPoint presentation, or I could upload different things for people to download. Right? So I have all of this capability. I can drag in others, either mute the audience or hide names. These are all the conference functions you would look at, right? Don't admit anyone, everyone's an attendee. Invite more people, invite people by email, whatever I want to do, I can choose to do. So I've got all my conferencing function, all my enterprise voice function, and all my IM and presence function all in one client. Now, in a 1-hour webinar, I can't show off every feature and function, but hopefully we've started to show you some of the real high levels, looking at people, understanding, looking at how they are in my relationships or people who have added me, integrations into my Outlook calendar, so it shows me different things. I happen to be leaving tonight to go camping for the New York State Fair, so there you go, you've got that. The dial pad, and the reason we added the dial pad because people forget that you can do this. I can type in 1-800-FLOWERS. It will convert the words to numbers for me. So I don't need the dial pad. I can actually, when I'm dialing in or I'm calling in, it says, type the person's last name. You can actually just type their last name and it will convert the name to numbers. Okay? My favorite feature, or more importantly, my wife's favorite feature, is this check call button. This was also a new feature in 2013, which gives us the ability to see how I sound. I'm working from a hotel. I'm working from a Starbucks. I'm working from somewhere I don't know. And I need to make sure that my call quality is going to be good. What check call will do is it'll call into the Lync server, have you record your voice, and then play it back to you so you can hear how you sound. Just so you can check. The reason it's my wife's favorite feature is because before this feature existed, back 2-3 versions ago, I would call her and say, hey, do I sound okay? Great, thanks. And I'd hang up. And I'd do this to her 2 or 3 times a day when I was at various locations because I didn't have the ability to check it myself. So great feature for those who are road warriors like myself. So hopefully through that demonstration, you've seen some of the features. We haven't even begun to scratch the surface on things like integrating it into SharePoint and seeing presence in SharePoint, or seeing presence in all of your emails, or being able to work the presence into SharePoint workflows, or being able to IM from within a Word document or an Excel spreadsheet. All of these integration points outside of the few we've seen exist. And that goes back to our best of suite. And when we talk about our unified device strategy, this client exists for both the iPad, the Android, the Windows tablet. There's a Windows 8 Modern UI app. There's a web client for if you're on a device that can't support any of them. And they're all designed to look and feel the same. The same interaction, the same set of controls, so that as a user, if you know how to use it here, you know how to use it on the iPad. You know how to use it on the Windows mobile phone. You know how to use it on your various devices because you've been trained to use it here. Okay, so now we're going to swap back and we're going to finish up real quick with a little bit of architecture. Again, this was much more geared around the usability, but I do want to spend just a brief moment talking about the architecture and what Lync looks like. So when we talk about Lync in your system, we're going to talk about it on-prem. You can run Lync in Office 365. The difference with Lync in Office 365 is it's not able to integrate with your existing on-premise PBX, and it's not able to function as a PBX in the cloud yet. Now, being able to function as a PBX is in the roadmap. So eventually Lync will become a hosted PBX, but that's still about 12 to 18 months away. Integration with your PBX, we can get into the technical why-tos and wherefores if you're interested. Just follow up with us afterward, and we're happy to go through why. But that integration with Office 365 and, say, an on-premise Polycom system or an on-premise PBX is not in the roadmap because it is impractical. Not impossible, but impractical. So we'll talk about Lync as an on-premise solution in an enterprise telephony state. And we'll talk about the 3 different modalities in which we would deploy Lync. So the first is what we call IM and presence. And that's simply deploying Lync for IM presence, peer-to-peer voice, peer-to-peer video, right? Internal only. And for that, all we need is the Lync Consolidated Front-End Server, or FE server. This is Lync. Everything we talked about or demonstrated or showed is all consolidated on the front-end server. This is the heart, the brains, the guts. This is Lync. So there's a bunch of different ways you can configure it with high availability through a physical load balancer. That's all determined by how much DR and high availability you actually want in your system. We can do it as a single server. We can do it as an enterprise pool. All depends on you, and it scales. A single enterprise pool can go from 1 user to 100,000 users in an individual pool, right? Not that we'd ever advocate a pool that size given geographic dispersity, but in theory we could. That's the theoretical limit now for an individual pool. So we've got that. So now that we've got our front end server, we connect that through a mediation server to our gateway. Now, do we need this server? Maybe, maybe not. Lync wants to talk SIP. That's it. That's what Lync talks, Session Initiated Protocol. We talk SIP. If you have a PRI or TDM-based PBX, then you need to connect it through a gateway to translate. Pretty simple. From there, now we've got it connected to the phone system. So I can have people start using Lync as their phone system, making calls, calling the people on their cell phones or whatever it is, because I've got that configuration set up. The next piece will become our edge services. So this is what's going to allow remote people to connect in without the need of a VPN, because VPN and voice and VPN and video don't mesh. So I generally don't want to connect the two together. I want to try and eliminate that. And the edge server is going to let us securely connect back in. We're also going to need something that does reverse proxy. A lot of you already have that for your Exchange environment, and so we can use that same device more likely than not. But we'll need something that can also run reverse proxy. This lets me federate to outside companies. It lets me federate with things like Skype now and connect with those outside services. Some other things may come in. I can do a monitoring server. Now, we represent it here as a separate server. Understand, everything you see here does not necessarily mean it's a separate physical server. I'm representing it on this chart that way, so logically you understand it. It doesn't mean you have another server. The monitoring server, as example, which monitors your quality of experience and your overall voice performance, is actually co-located on the front-end server. So it's the same server, but it's a different function that we're running on that server. We have things like persistent chat and other features we can get into if you're interested that exist. So from there, I can start rolling out UC endpoints or Lync devices. There are over 650 certified and optimized endpoints now for Lync. I happen to be talking on a Plantronics headset. I also have a Polycom phone in my office. I have a Jabra speakerphone. I have a bunch of different devices at my fingertips. Now the key here, because Lync, when you're buying your endpoints, they're from 10 different manufacturers potentially. That drives cost down. If you buy a Cisco PBX, you're buying Cisco phones. You buy an Avaya PBX, you're buying Avaya phones. They have you. You have to buy their equipment. Whereas with Lync, you can buy OpenSIP, optimized and certified devices that will connect back in. So the VVX line from Polycom or Snome or Astra, Plantronics, Jabra, they all have these devices. That competition drives down cost. The average cost of a Lync endpoint is anywhere from 50 to 75% of what a traditional endpoint costs. And it all depends on your phones versus headsets. Most companies I deal with start off with this notion that they're going to be 90% phones and 10% headsets. By the time we're done, it's 50-50. Especially the more mobile you are, the more mobile workforce you have, the more the mobile devices and the headsets make sense. A traditional phone does me very little good. I have them because this is what I specialize in, but it, to be honest, does me very little good. I'm out in the field more days than I'm in the office. So the headsets are far more important to me. Now, if I was a brick and mortar based employee, the phones would make a lot more sense. The next piece we roll in here is unified messaging on Exchange, and this is a key thing to understand. Remember, when we talked earlier, asynchronous communication is Exchange. Voicemail is asynchronous. So your voicemail is actually a function of Exchange, not Lync. The same is true of your IVR. Your IVR is your auto attendant is all Exchange based. So we do require or need to be at least on Exchange 2010. Technically 2007 can work, but it's not supported as well, and it's really, there are a lot of functions that were added in 2010, so we really look for Exchange to be on 2010. This will work with Exchange in Office 365. So if you have an Office, if you've moved your mail to Office 365, but your Lync is on premise for voice, that's actually perfectly acceptable. Okay, you don't have to stay in a hybrid deployment. You can do full cloud-based deployment of your mail, and then connect your Lync to it. From there, we can now turn off the PBX, go directly to the PSTN, and we're up and running, and the old PBX is gone. So you've seen through that step through migration, we went from IM and presence only all the way through enterprise voice. So Lync can fit the needs of your organization. Look at, you've got $2 million invested in telephony PBX now, and you know the end of life for that, or the ROI for that, still 3 years away. Great, that doesn't stop you from doing Lync, right? We do Lync, we integrate it with what you have, and we run in a side-by-side mode for a period of time. Then when you're ready, the ROI has been achieved, or certain workloads. In a lot of cases, extending Lync to remote workers is much easier than extending your on-premise PBX today. So maybe it's that all the brick-and-mortar people are running through the existing telephony system, but those mobile employees will push out and run them through Lync as their primary system. And we can still set up things like 4-digit dialing and click-to-call and all of those wonderful things between the two, right? So Lync fits what you need. So when we talk about that completeness of vision, or we talk about that ability to execute, this is one of those key things. There is no customer who isn't ready for Lync on some level, even if you're not ready for PBX replacement. We can still put it in and get the most value out of it. And a good number of you likely already own some portion of Lync, as it's included with the enterprise agreements in the standard CALs and the enterprise CALs, or with your Office 365 subscription. Lync is included on some level, so you own it. So let's deploy it and make use of it. Let's not let it be shelfware. Let's get it into your environment and see what goes. To that end, to wrap up today, there's a bunch of different ways that we can do next steps. So one of the things we can do is an on-site solution briefing or architectural design session where we can work with you and figure out for your organization, where are you in the life cycle? Where are you in understanding what needs to happen next? And we can do that. And we do that free of charge. We do that at either the Microsoft Technology Centers, if you're nearby one, or we do it over the web or on site at your location, depending on where you are. And we're definitely able to help you there. We can also do what's called a Microsoft Experience Center session. So a lot of what we talked about today, the key is users don't know what they don't know. They don't know what's possible. So with a MEC session, what we can do is bring your business users in and expose them to this data, expose them to this world, not just Lync, but Outlook and Office and SharePoint and CRM and any of the various applications, and kind of show them what's possible. The website for the MEC says it all. It's envisionthepossible.com. And that really tells you what is what's important to your users, because they're able to give IT that answer. They're able to give IT that visibility into what's important to them, and gee, I saw these 5 things today, and of those, these 2 would really transform what I'm doing. That helps IT determine the roadmap for how quickly and which ones to do first. And then lastly, we do have quick start offerings. We have planning engagements. We have the ability to stand up Lync at a fairly low cost entry point and just get it up and running so that you can play with it, whether it's through a standard edition pool, a single or very 2 or 3 server architecture. Just get it up and running all the way through, helping you design out your full enterprise deployment. And we've done deployments, 5, 10, 20 users using Office 365 up through, 10, 20,000 users using it as a global PBX system. We've really run the gamut, so we're able to help your organization figure out what's there. So with that, I do want to thank you all for taking your time today and attending our webinar. If there are any questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A section. But other than that, I want to thank you for your time. Definitely follow up with us if you are interested in a further deep dive or an architectural design session on that back end, or to look into more depth the features and functions and devices that are available to you.